Welcome to you all. My name is Dunia Chamberlain. I'm a teacher and the founder of INTA, and I'm very happy to have you here today for this live discussion with Sarah and organized by Innovating Teachers Academy. If you have any questions, because we're a small group, you can just either you can put your question in the chat and then we'll take it, or you can just raise your hand and come on and ask Sarah directly. I'm going to just introduce a little bit INTA first. So INTA was born from a simple idea. Teachers thrive when they are connected, when they feel supported, and when they're inspired by others. At INTA, we offer first a caring and inspiring community of educators. We are now quite a few people. We're nearly 500 teachers on the platform. And the community has different discussion groups that you can join and speak with other teachers, exchange ideas, ask questions, and so on. We also offer training sessions created by teachers for teachers, focused on your real classroom challenges. We have ready-to-use resources to enrich your lessons. And we have, like today, we have interactive live lessons and webinars on different themes that we all encounter in our classrooms. Tonight, I'm really happy to welcome Sarah Seleznyov this evening. Sarah has over 30 years experience as a teacher, school leader, researcher, and education consultant. She is the founding head teacher of School 360 in London, an experimental state school focused on innovation and a specialist in mathematics and the Let's Think approach. Her current research focuses on teacher professional development and lesson study, which is exactly what she'll be exploring with us tonight. So thank you to all for being here today, and thank you to you, Sarah. I will let you.
Thank you, Dunya. So just a little, thank you for that very kind introduction. Just a little story really about why lesson study and how I came across lesson study. So I've always been interested in teacher professional development, and I've always been interested in the role of live practice in teacher professional development. I know from my own experience that when I'm in a room and someone's telling me how to do something, it doesn't really help me to develop my practice as much as testing it out in the classroom and talking about that experience with colleagues. So I've always been interested in looking at that through my own practice, through the professional development that I design for other people, and also through my research. I'm a PhD student, and I accidentally came across lesson study when I was working for the Institute of Education in London, and I was asked to do the impact evaluation for a couple of lesson study projects, and it was the first time I'd ever heard of lesson study. So it was something completely new for me. And I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of catching up, a lot of finding out about lesson study. And what I found at the time, this was about 10 to 15 years ago, was that there was very little to read about lesson study. This was a practice that came from Japan. But the Japanese themselves, it was so natural to them. It was something that they did every day, all the time. They didn't realize it was special and unusual, and they hadn't written anything that, or hardly anything, that could be accessed by Westerners in any language other than Japanese, which I know very few people speak outside of Japan. So I ended up being lucky enough to go on a study visit to Japan, 2-week study visit, which was funded by my university, to go and find out about lesson study. And that really blew me over. And I realized that everything I'd been doing around lesson study in the UK, based on the sorts of readings from UK and US authors, had not really fully captured the depth, the breadth, and the wonderful character of Japanese lesson study and how powerful it is for teachers. So that started me off on my PhD studies, which were around lesson study, and started me off supporting schools in the UK and beyond to implement lesson study, to test it out, to try it out, and to see what a great difference it makes to teachers. So that's my little story. That's how I came across lesson study. And it'd be really nice to start from your stories. So if you can, in the chat or by unmuting yourself and just speaking, it would be really nice to know your name, your role in your school, where you're based, what age you teach. And in particular, I'm really interested to know what challenges with teacher professional development do you face inside your own schools? So where is professional development not quite hitting what you would like it to hit and making the difference that you would like it to make to your practice or generally to teachers in your school? So I don't know if anyone would like to put that in the chat for me or just unmute yourself and say, but that would be wonderfully helpful. Just give you a couple of minutes to write down. Nobody brave enough to speak out loud? Okay, thank you, Precious. Be good to know, Precious, what your experiences of professional development have been and what's been challenging about it. Lovely to meet you, Precious. I used to teach in Escort in between Durban and Pietermaritzburg a long, long time ago. So, Danya, I can see one challenge for you with professional development is it doesn't offer hands-on activities to use in the classroom. Yeah, a familiar thing. A lot of theory and not many practical tools that you can take away and try straight away. Any other thoughts for people on challenges that they face with professional development? Okay, we've got one from Precious here. Professional development not being personalized, absolutely, and impractical for the classroom. Yeah, can I actually take this and take it into my classroom? I think that's a particular problem actually from the research that is faced by secondary teachers who teach in subject specialisms, that there's often a one size fits all professional development experience which doesn't relate to people's subject specialism. So that's very common in the professional development research. Naveen and is it Jan?
Sorry, it is Fran.
Fran, sorry, Fran. Fran, are you able to speak or can you type? Or Naveen also? Oh, there we are, Fran. Excellent. Okay. Hi, Fran. I probably know you, Fran, in that context. I can see you've been working with Collaborative Lesson Research UK. Excellent. So yeah, my work is rooted in a lot of the sort of collaboration that I've had with Japanese academics and specialists in lesson study. So that's really great. Okay, so hopefully Naveen will drop something into the chat for us. But I'm going to give you in the session. Oh, hi, Naveen. There you are. A maths teacher in a public school. What age do you teach, Naveen? And any problems that you have with professional development? While Naveen is putting that in there, so I'm going to, in this session, hopefully give you a brief overview of what lesson study is and the evidence for it, and give you a little bit of some ideas of how, even if you don't go full blown with lesson study, how you might change your professional development model to make it more engaging and impactful. Lovely. Teaching 9-year-olds, one of my favorite year groups, Naveen, in Lebanon. Lovely to meet you. Okay, so I'm going to presume that Fran, you know a little bit about lesson study, but I don't know whether Precious or Naveen, you know anything about lesson study. So I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'm just going to share my screen. I have a little bit of a PowerPoint to share with you. Just give me 1 second to get that up. There we go. Let me go to the beginning here. Can everyone see that? Yeah, can you see that, everybody? Yep,
Yes,
great.
we can see it
Okay,
just fine.
lovely. Okay, so this slide gives a bit of the kind of background to lesson study and where lesson study comes from. And I've compared there the ideas of a UK researcher and what the Japanese say about the 3 levels of teaching. So the Japanese talk about 3 levels of teacher, and they say we need to enable all of our teachers to move through these 3 levels. So when you first start teaching, when you're a student teacher, you're learning how to tell people the important basic ideas of mathematics or any other subject. You're finding out how to explain things to people. What are the important things that children need to learn, and how can I explain those things to people? So that's the first level of being a teacher. The second level of being a teacher, when you get a little bit more experience than that, this level of teacher can explain the meanings and reasons behind those ideas, knowledge, and skills so that students can understand them. So that's the second level of being a teacher. But the third lesson of being a teacher is basically about being a learning experience designer. So you can create opportunities, you can design and create opportunities for students to understand those basic ideas, and that will therefore help students to become independent learners. So that is the third level of being a teacher, and that's what the Japanese are trying to help teachers to become through lesson study. And in Japan, they say that it takes you 10 years to move from level 1 to level 3 and to become a really expert teacher. And you'll see on the right there, someone called Sam Twistleton, who does a lot of research into developing teachers, and she's explained it slightly different. So she's talked about when you're the first level of teacher, you're a task manager. You can manage the tasks that are in the textbooks, that are in the resources, that are in the curriculum that students need to experience. At the second level, you can deliver the curriculum. So you've gone beyond task, you understand the curriculum in its entirety, and you're able to deliver that to students. But what we really want teachers to be is to be concept builders, to help students build schema in their minds, to develop really deep understanding of what's happening in the classroom. And that for me is very similar to these 3 levels of a teacher that we talk about in Japanese lesson study. So I don't know if that rings any bells with you. Please do comment in the chat if that makes any sense to you. And what's the point of professional development? That's the other thing for us to consider. And I think for me, there are 5 core purposes of professional development. And I'm going to talk to you about how current professional development models tend to kind of miss the mark if they don't hit any of these aspects of professional development. So obviously, we do want professional development to improve teaching and to thereby improve pupil learning and outcomes. And actually, some of the comments you've put about the problems with professional development, that's when professional doesn't really do these things. If professional development doesn't give you activities and you can use in your classroom right away, then you're not going to improve your teaching. You'll listen to the session, you'll hear what they're saying, but you won't actually apply it in the classroom. And then that will never improve teacher learning and outcomes. Similarly, if you're not encouraged to change your practice, so if it's not personalized, if it's not practical for you to use in the classroom, you are not going to change your practice, then that's not going to improve teaching, and it's not going to improve pupil learning and therefore outcomes. But underpinning those 2 things are 2 really important principles which lesson study is really strong at. If teachers are not given agency in their professional development, if they don't feel they have control, that it's personalized to them, that it's relevant to them, that they're involved in making choices about their own professional development, then that's a big problem. And lesson study definitely does give teachers agency. And also, if your professional development model doesn't build a culture of school improvement, teacher learning, and high expectations for students, then again, it's very unlikely that teachers are going to change their practice, that teaching will be improved and student learning will be improved. So I don't know if anyone wants to put any comments in the chat about how that resonates with them. Is that relevant to you in your context? And are there any ones in there that you're particularly looking at? That would be wonderful to know. So this is what lesson study does, a brief overview of lesson study, and this comes from my own research into the features of Japanese lesson study. And for me, there are 7 key features of Japanese lesson study. So first of all, teachers identify a focus. So they look at the children that they have in their own classrooms and they say, what kind of learners would I like my students to be? And then they say, okay, and where are they now? And what's the gap between where I would like them to be and where they are now? And that helps them to identify a school-wide research theme. And that research theme may last for 2 to 3 years. So the Japanese take a very, very long view of teacher development. They don't believe you can change your practice overnight. I think we all, as teachers, know that. Teaching is a habit, and it takes a long time for us to really change that habit and improve what we're doing in the classroom. We need to give teachers time to think, time to reflect, time to practice those changes, and it can't happen overnight. The second feature of Japanese lesson study is the planning process. And this is where when I first started out with lesson study, I didn't realize how important the planning process was. I thought it was all about the research lesson and the post-lesson discussion, but I've learned over the years that teachers learn a lot from doing collaborative planning together, and lesson study provides opportunities for them to do that. Teachers work in small collaborative groups, and they start out by carrying out what's called Kyozai Kenku, and this is a study of material. So whatever their research theme is, they study some material that's relevant to that so that they know what they want to try out in the classroom. And they use that study to produce a collaboratively written lesson plan for a research lesson. That's a very, very detailed lesson plan, which looks at how students might respond to the lesson and what student misconceptions and successes might be. And we know from research into teacher professional development that the ability to predict pupil responses and respond to them is one of the skills that turns you into a higher, a better teacher, basically. If you're better able to predict student responses to lessons, you will become a better teacher. So that's a really, really important part of the process. Then all of the teachers go into the classroom of one teacher in the group, and that one teacher teaches the lesson. In essence, she's not teaching her own lesson, she's teaching the collaboratively planned lesson. And the others who are in the room are acting as observers, but they're not observing the teacher, which is quite different to a normal lesson observation. They're watching the students to see, do the students respond to this collaboratively planned lesson in the way that we imagined they would? So it's a very different dynamic for a lesson observation in which you're not actually looking at the teacher and judging the way the teacher leads the lesson. You're looking at the students and saying, do they respond in the way that we anticipated? And does that enable us to answer our research question that we set at the start of this process? Those teachers will then leave the room and they'll go and have a formal post-lesson discussion. So they have a set of conversation protocols and they will talk about, okay, what was our research theme? What did we all notice students doing in that lesson? And how does that help us answer our research question? What have we learned about teaching and learning from watching those students? And again, teachers who participate in lesson study talk about how powerful it is to be able to sit back and not interact with students. Interaction with students is actually banned during the lesson. To just watch what students are doing and to see how they respond to the learning that was provided for them. And that's not the end. So often research into teacher professional development says that we expect teachers to make changes to their practice really, really quickly. and they actually need a lot more time to experiment and test ideas out in the classroom. And lesson study actually involves repeating those cycles of planning, teaching, and discussing the findings several times before they can answer their research question. And they don't reteach previous lessons. They don't try and make perfect lessons by taking the learning from one research lesson, trying to perfect it and teaching it to another class. No worries, Fran. They will test out completely new lessons and try them out with their colleagues. Another thing that's really key for Japanese lesson study is having some outside expertise. So usually in Japan, you have a person called a koshi who comes in and gives expertise into the planning process and the research lesson. In the UK, we don't have koshis, as in many places across the world. So we've had to get our outside expertise by looking at research material from outside the school. And then because teachers finally are working in lots and lots of different groups, we need to mobilize knowledge across those learning groups. So whatever one set of teachers have learned, they need to be able to share it with their other colleagues, either by watching each other's research lessons or writing about their findings or doing presentations on their findings. Those are all the different kinds of ways that we've done that in the UK. So that's the features of lesson study, and this is how it works in a Japanese school. So there's an overarching research theme, and each of the teachers in the schools will sit under that research theme in a different subject group. So in relation to your idea, Precious, of making sure that it's relevant and pertinent to you as a teacher, you'd be working with your colleagues in the same subject department or similar subject department to engage in the process of lesson study. But when the Japanese research lesson takes place, which might be research lesson number 1, lots of other teachers from the school might come along and observe that research lesson with you, and they might discuss that together with you and share their observations of learning so that everyone benefits from learning from all the different subject lessons. Each department would have its subject lesson in turn, and everybody would be able to come along to the research lesson and join the post-lesson discussion and hear what the learning was from that research lesson. Okay, a couple of pictures to show you, and then we'll be a bit of time for questions and answers. So this is an example of a Japanese classroom. You'll see at the front, unlike lots of classrooms in Europe and in America, the Japanese don't make much use of technology or interactive whiteboards in the classroom. They decided that those technologies are not very good because what they want is a big long board that can keep a record of children's thinking and how it progresses as they go throughout the lesson. So they will have a very big chalkboard or whiteboard at the front of their classroom, and they will record all the different stages of thinking as the lesson progresses and grows. And you'll see there, you can see some observers to the side of the classroom. And you can also see one observer who's moved in to have a look at what some of the pupils are doing. And then when the teacher starts talking again, that observer will kind of scuttle back to the edges so as not to interfere with the flow of the lesson. Here's another lesson. Again, you can see some observers around the edge of the room. And you can see the observers writing lots and lots and lots of notes on what they can see. And that's one of the skills that lesson study experts in Japan say they have to train teachers to do, is to write really, really detailed notes. So they're gathering lots and lots of evidence of student learning for the post-lesson discussion. This is a little picture of a post-lesson discussion. So again, you can see teachers with lots and lots of handwritten notes that they've taken during the lesson. And it's a very formal discussion. They will each take turns to speak, so everyone has an opportunity to contribute to the discussion and to learn from the discussion and to ask questions. And just a little bit of Japanese craziness for you here. So what I'm talking to you about today is school-based lesson study, but this is regional or even national lesson study. And when that happens, they put a class up onto the stage, and the observers fill the entire hall. And sometimes the lesson is also broadcast on a screen to other locations. so that other people can observe and listen to the lesson. And then there's a huge post-lesson discussion on the stage, and people from the audience can post their questions and their observations and get it answered. So not something I've ever tried in the United Kingdom. Would be a bit of a shock to the system, I think, for teachers here. But yeah, something to something of interest to share with you.
Sarah, can I ask a
Okay,
question? Um,
yes.
are students not intimidated by having all these adults, or are they used to
Yeah,
it? Or
yeah. So in Japan, they're completely used to it, and they literally do not bat an eyelid. I actually saw a big one like this on the stage in Japan in November, and I was shocked. I thought it was very strange to be in the room, and I wondered how the pupils would respond initially. But at the start, they were very excited, and they were all waving to the audience and smiling and laughing. They were about 9 or 10. But as the lesson unfolded and they became engrossed in solving the problem that the teacher had posed for them, it was almost as if they forgot about the other observers and the audience being in the room. And they only remembered at the end when, again, they got really smiley and came to the front of the stage and bowed and waved and then left. And they were absolutely fine with giving their opinion, answering the teacher's questions, and so on and so forth. So, although it looks very bizarre to us, it's very normal to Japanese students. And the other thing to say is when we do it, yes, you're right, Precious. Co-teaching is very common, and they do believe strongly in collaboration. And that's not so much the case in the schools that I've worked with, where it can be quite alien. So we usually start our lesson study groups with 3 to 4 teachers working together who know and trust each other. And that is a very much kind of dipping your toe in the water of not being scared to show your teaching to other people, because you know that those other people are not looking at you as a teacher. They're not judging you as a teacher. They are actually watching how the students respond to things that they have planned in the collaborative planning session. So it's very important that the lesson plan is seen as a shared artifact that doesn't belong to the teacher that's teaching the lesson. In fact, the teacher who's teaching the lesson may have said, well, that wouldn't ordinarily be the way I would do it, but I'm going to do it like that for this lesson so that we can test it out and see how it works. So you're absolutely right, Precious. There are a lot of cultural differences to take into account if you're introducing it into your own context. Having said that, lesson study has been introduced around the world, in Africa, Asia, America, and across Europe in lots and lots of different contexts, with those small adaptations to make it work for the local culture. Naveen, I don't know if you have any questions or comments on that also. No. Okay. I'm going to do a couple more slides for you that might be of interest. Yeah. So these are the kind of lessons that I've learned from my research. Thanks, Naveen. These are the kind of lessons that I've learned from my research about how to get going with lesson study, because lesson study is systematic and embedded across Japan. It's the main professional development model for almost all primary and middle schools. Less so for high schools, where they begin cramming for very high stakes tests that they have in Japan. But there is some usage of it in the high schools. It's very different outside Japan, where we're starting from scratch and we don't have the kind of systems to help us build and embed lesson study and keep it going in a sustainable way. Because I think one of the mistakes outside Japan has been to think that lesson study is a kind of one-off project. You do a research lesson, you learn something, and that's it. You've done lesson study, it's over. And my research has been about changing and improving professional development practices in line with what's really wonderful about lesson study, so that it can endure and last and make a long-term difference to teachers' professional development. So we know, for example, that teachers engaging in research or inquiry projects, that makes a massive difference to their autonomy and to their engagement with professional development. And this is a research process. We know that it's really good for teachers to get outside evidence into their teaching, but we need to give it to them in really digestible and accessible ways. And so the model of lesson study that I've developed has lots and lots of really powerful ways to take difficult reading material or extensive reading material for teachers and to turn it into little bite-sized pieces that they can use as part of lesson study. We know that teachers really benefit from doing deep collaborative planning. It can help them to understand misconceptions, to anticipate student successes, and to become a better teacher. We know that teachers can't change their practice unless there are ways for them to try new things in a safe environment. And my experience of doing lesson study with teachers is that it helps teachers in these small groups to try out new practices without feeling like if they fail, it's going to be a judgment on them as teachers, or if it's a struggle, it's going to be a judgment on their teaching capacity. They're trying out with colleagues that they trust, and that makes them more likely to take a risk and try something new. And we also know it's really, really nice and helpful to be able to observe and gather data on student learning. We rarely get the opportunity as teachers to just sit and listen and watch students without interfering and trying to help them improve in the moment of the lesson. So it's really a relief for a lot of teachers that take part in lesson study to be able to take that time to just sit back and try to watch students and really understand their learning. And finally, lesson study gives us time. That's the one thing that teachers always ask for. They always ask for time to think. And lesson study gives them time to reflect and think about what they want to apply in their own practice over time instead of moving on to the next topic. So back to my slides. And this comes from my own research, and this is kind of the framework for the course that I've developed for you. A couple of things that make lesson study more likely to be successful in contexts outside Japan. First of all, getting the head teacher support can be really, really important. And I have lots of strategies to help you engage your head teachers with lesson study and let them give you a go at trying it out with wider groups of teachers. Secondly, ways to embed it in your policy and system so it becomes part of the way you work. I've got lots of ideas for that from the schools that I've supported. Thirdly, the idea of having champions for lesson study. Ideally, if you come on this program, you will become a champion for lesson study, but you'll need to have some colleagues with you who can help you and support you, and I've got lots of ideas on how to do that. Finally, what resources and time and material you'll need to make lesson study be a really high quality learning experience. And on the right there, you can see 3 circles. These are the kind of leadership roles that lesson study leaders do in Japan. I already talked to you about the Koshi, who brings in outside knowledge. And I've got lots of strategies to enable you to bring in outside knowledge into the lesson study process. You do need a facilitator. Oh, Precious cannot see the screen. Am I not sharing my screen, guys?
Yes, I was just thinking the same. As I'm listening to you, I
Okay.
think we don't see your screen.
Okay, let me just go back and do that again. I'm really sorry, guys. So I've gone through quite a few slides already. You've seen these pictures, yeah?
Yes.
Could you see the pictures?
Yes, we could
Yes, we
see
saw
it.
the pictures.
You saw the pictures, you just missed this one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, apologies.
No worries.
Yeah, so Koshi, I've already talked to you about. Facilitator, we need someone who can facilitate the planning sessions and the post-lesson discussions. And I offer lots of help for you on how best to do that. And then RLC stands for Research Learning Community. So committee. So in a Japanese school, they have a group of people who organize lesson study. They timetable it. They make sure everyone has the capacity to join in. They decide when's the best time of the year to do it. And I've got lots of advice for you on that also coming as part of the program. So just a couple more slides. I won't do all of them, but some of them that are relevant to you. This is some of the quotes from people in my research who really got going with lesson study. So I thought I would share these with you. So these schools have got really, really successful models, and the teachers in these schools, they absolutely love lesson study. They say it's a much more powerful way than the old ways of doing lesson study, which was basically a series of staff meetings led by school leaders, giving an input, or people from outside the school, with very little time for teachers to go away and practice that. Yes, Precious, your question, does this work for ESL teaching with co-teachers? Absolutely. It's a very powerful way to do that, actually. It's a very, very powerful way of doing that. You can make lesson study fit any focus that you want it to fit, but it's particularly powerful for people who already work with co-teachers and already collaborate with them. It just enables them to deepen their collaboration and to learn more effectively from each other. You'll see there that some people think it's really, really expensive, and that's why they don't do it. And this is a line from a big primary school in the UK who says it costs for his whole school to do lesson study, it costs £5,000 a year, which out of a big budget in the UK for a UK school is very, very minimal. So it's not a hugely expensive way to do professional development. And in that school there, you'll see bottom right, he talks about any issues that are significant. The first thing we say is, can we do a lesson study? So they use lesson study as a problem solving strategy. So if we've got a problem with helping students learn a particular piece of grammar, let's do a lesson study and work out how best to do it. If we've got a problem with looking at how why students are not very good at problem solving in mathematics, let's do a lesson study on it. So it can be used to apply in any context. If we've got a problem with how do we get our ESL students to be more confident at speaking out in lessons, let's do a lesson study on that. And yeah, a couple more other comments there that just talk about how enjoyable people find lesson study. They find it interesting, it's simple yet complex. It's focused on planning lessons, but it's really, really interesting and really helps teachers to develop their practice. So do post any other questions in the chat. Those are really helpful to me. Yeah, I thought it would be quite interesting to show you this. This is about how most of the talk we do as teachers is at quite a shallow level, quite a low quality level in the classroom. And what lesson study does is it tries to move us to that high or that deep talk for teachers. So talking about the pedagogical principles that underlie teaching and learning, talking about the way students learn or how students think or the underlying principles or concepts. That is what lesson study is trying to get teachers to do. I'm going to skip over a couple of this and just talk to you about the programme. So we plan to start on February the 25th. And the way I've structured the course is that you have a 2-hour live online session with me, which is a kind of overview and introduction to lesson study and to the practical handbook that you're going to get as part of the programme. And then there are 2 online self-paced learning modules, but you'd obviously have Dunya will correct me here, you'd be able to get access to me to solve any kind of personal problems that you were having as you work through those learning modules, or to get any advice on how you're working with groups of teachers inside your own school. There'll be a lot of advice. Yes, Dunya,
sorry about that. Yes, we can set up a discussion group on the platform where you're together with Sarah, so then you can ask questions, or if you tried it at school and something didn't work, then you can just ask her and say, and the other participants, you can ask and say, oh, how did it work with you? What did you do? And so on. So those group discussions are very helpful, and they give you support too when you try something new.
Great. And I give you lots of advice on how to make sure that the learning is really high quality, engaging for all the teachers that are involved. And also lots of advice in the second online self-paced learning module on how you might implement lesson study and scale it up with really high quality for other teachers in the school, if that's something that you are interested in, particularly if you're in a leadership role. So that's me kind of done, Dunya. I know that you're going to put some links to sign up into the chat, but if there are any other questions, I'm very, very happy to answer those.
Yes, and while you write your questions, so we have put the links in the chat, but what I will do is I will send you an email in the last couple of days with the links, so you have them yourself, also with a little bit about this discussion, and also the link to access the replay if you want to have that. I think also it's important to know that on January the 22nd, Sarah is giving a webinar with two other experts on the Let's Think pedagogy, and it's Alex Black and Leah Crawford. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this webinar.
Yeah, so this might particularly be of interest to you, Naveen, who teach, since you teach mathematics. There are going to be three experts on that seminar. Me talking about mathematics, Alex talking about science, and Leah talking about English. And we're talking about a research-proven approach that's been around since the 1980s and has lots and lots of research evidence behind it, which can develop children's thinking and problem-solving skills in those three subject areas, and which has a long-lasting impact on their learning. I'm going to be running a Let's Think in Maths program subsequently to that. But if you want to find out more about the approach and how it works with children and students, do come along. That's for primary age and secondary age students up to age 16. So yeah, if you're interested in finding out more about that, the link is there in the chat.
And I will include it in the email also, so you have all the information.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can see there's a new message there. Oh yes, come, yeah, okay. And any other questions, do drop them into the chat or stay behind and talk to me if you have to leave. Thank you for coming, Precious.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Precious and Naveen and Fran, who had to leave, for coming, and Sarah for this wonderful presentation. I found it very interesting and a powerful teaching practice. I really like that collaboration aspect, and especially that it's the group that's creating a lesson and it's someone else who's teaching it, or it's so nobody really feels like they have the responsibility for it. And I agree. I mean, all these years I've been working in different schools. I think it's more important to look at the learning of the students rather than the teaching of the teacher, because we learn so much more by seeing what they're learning and what they're understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. We hope to see you again. We will definitely stay in touch, give you all these links if you haven't had time to have a look at it. And we're hoping to see you first on the 22nd for that webinar, interesting webinar, because you will have English, so precious is for you. You'll have math for Niveen, and then we'll have science also, so we can see it really how it works in different subject or different disciplines. And then we have, of course, the dates. So the starting the 25th of February for the lesson study course itself. I'm going to turn off the recording, and then if we want to still talk a little bit, anybody wants to talk a little bit with Sarah, it's not a problem at all.